In this lesson, we'll learn about building user interfaces for our iOS applications. In doing that, we have to create different outlets such as buttons, image views, so on and so forth. So I'm going to head into Xcode. I'm going to start myself a new project. So create new Xcode project. Again, the same type of app. If you do have a theme, you choose it. If not, you don't. You give it a name. I'm going to call it Interface Builder App. You put your organization identifier. In my case, is going to be com.odd institute. Com.odd institute, and then you use the storyboard, Swift, and no core data or no tests. I'm going to head next. I'm going to build my application, put it somewhere, and now we want to see that how can we actually have some stuff in our application when we run it. So basically, when I press the run and it loads on my simulator, I don't want to see this empty screen. I want to see some stuff that happens there. Now, at this point, don't worry about the specifics of it or why am I doing things in a certain way. Just worry about, following me along so you build a little bit of a confidence in terms of how you're doing things. On your left, there is something that we call the Project Explorer, and it shows you a bunch of different files. AppDelegate.swift, SceneDelegate.swift, ViewController.swift, so on and so forth. The file I want to choose right now is called main.storyboard. And if you choose this file, main.storyboard, it should basically load up a screen similar to mine, which shows us our screen of the application. It basically shows us what we will be seeing on the application. This is our interface builder or interface designer that allows us to design the different interfaces. Again, I should emphasize that in these early lessons, I'm just going to show you some of the basics of it. As we go along, we will get a lot better understanding as to how this thing works. For now, I just want you to pay attention to two things. One of them is at the very bottom of the screen in here, it says iPhone 11. And let me get rid of these two windows so I can show you a little bit larger. So when I press that button, it actually says, on what kind of device are you trying to design? Remember, we saw something similar to this in the past. When we were choosing a simulator, we could actually choose different kinds of simulator. So that is the one that we will run the application on, like the one I have on the right side of my screen. This one is the one that we choose to design our application on. So for instance, if you're thinking of designing an application on iPad, you choose, for instance, iPad Pro 12.9 inches or any of the similar iPads. Or if you're like me and you want to work on iPhone 11, then you choose iPhone 11. Keep in mind that for the most part, we use things such as constraints or auto layouts that basically adjust the same application for all different devices. There is, of course, significant differences between when you want to develop for iPhone or iPad, but among all the different iPhones or all the different iPads, we don't do separate designs. We just do one design and we adapt it for all the other ones. There is also the issue of orientation, whether this app is meant to work in the portrait mode or in the landscape mode. And again, at these earlier stages, maybe you just want to stick to the portrait mode, and then one step at a time, you might choose that you want to develop something in the landscape mode. In any case, I wanted you to know this and choose this one for now to be iPhone 11. And then within this iPhone 11, I could actually go ahead and make myself some outlets. Those are basically objects or elements or components that build your interface. How do we do that? On the top right corner, there is a little plus button. This is the one that we call a library. This is the library of all the things that we can create, and you can see it in two different views. The view that shows you the details or the view that just shows you the icons. One step at a time. Once you get used to it, you can leave it to this view, but for now you can look at all the details of them, and some of the names are rather explanatory and some of them they would require a little bit of digging to understand what they do. Again, you are not supposed to learn any of this right now. We are going to go through most of this in the future lessons, but if you wanted to play around in here, feel free to just add some objects so you get a sense of how do we add stuff and what kind of feedback we get once we run our applications. For instance, if I go ahead and I add a label in here, that's there, and I can drag these corners to make it, for instance, larger, put it in there. Then maybe I want to have myself a button, so that button is going to be there. And maybe I want to have myself a slider that I can slide as I go through. And maybe, you know, you want to add other stuff in here. You can just play around with a few of those. None of them obviously is going to do anything right now, simply because we don't know how to program for them, but we can add a few of these, and if we did, we can rerun our application by pressing the run button again. And this time around, when the application loads up, we see those stuff. So this is a button that is interactable. I can actually touch it. This is a switch that I can turn it on and off, and this is a slider that I can slide, and that's a label that statically shows me some text values. Obviously, none of this is actually effectively doing anything. I can, or the user can, interact with them, but they don't really do anything for us just yet. Now, from time to time, when you're running on the simulator or when you're doing different stuff, you might get this little, you know, window at the bottom that gives you some warnings. If this is an actual error, the application is not going to run, and we will have lessons about debugging and error handling. But as long as it's just a message, you can shut it down by, you know, putting it down and making sure that it just disappears. Now, if you make any of these different outlets, and if you have your inspector window open, which is this little window on the right, you could actually select them and make some changes to them. Selecting either of them will load up the details of that one. So that would basically show you what you're trying to do in there. If by any chance you don't have this window on the right, you actually have to go to View, I think Inspectors, and then turn one of them on. That would show up. I usually use the hotkeys. That's why I'm used to that. So that's basically Option, Command, and 0. And then for the other side is just Command and 0. You don't really need to do that. I do it because as we go along, I want to make sure that in my view, in what I'm showing you, I have the most limited content, so it's not distracting. But for you, you can just keep it at one kind of, you know, interface at all times. Now in here, if you select something, you can actually get to access these different parameters, and that has to happen within here, which is the one that's called Attributes Inspector. There are other types of inspectors in here that we'll talk about them in the upcoming lessons, but this is the one that we really care about for now, the Attributes Inspector, which what you can do on it is some of them are more complex, but some of them are easier. For instance, if you select a label, the one that says you can change the text alignment, that's obviously very simple. Or you can change the size of the font, that's also very simple. Here there is something for changing the background color, so I can change the background color of it to system orange. That's also rather simple to understand. There are some of them that they are easier to understand and some of them that are more complex. You don't again have to learn any of these right now. We will go through all of these at some point in the future. We'll get to learn how each of them works and why do we do each of them. But if you wanted to just play around and get yourself a little bit of a confidence as to what you are trying to do, by all means do that, and, you know, play around with these settings, try to make some sense of some of them if they work for you. And, you know, if any of them didn't work or you didn't understand what's happening, don't worry about it. We will come to this real soon. In our future lessons, we'll understand how they actually work. So that was the basics of how we use the interface builder. The interface builder is in our main.storyboard file. The storyboard file is the file that we use to design our view controllers, as we call them. In different designs, you could refer to them as different screens or as different pages. Once we get all of this done, we write our code and we make our applications basically function. So this was a quick introduction as to how we make some stuff in our storyboard. Let's keep it up to here and let's move on to our next lesson.